How does money play a role in relationships? Yeah.
Oh, this one's so good. I mean, my husband and I, we have been on a journey in terms of money. So money, sex, and power are all connected in the second chakra of the body. And this is the area of the body that is our reproductive organs, our low back. It is the energy center connected. And so in relationships, in romantic relationships, money is going to be all intertwined in the sexual energy, and it is fascinating. I mean, if you look at like kind of like that classic, dating scenario with like the wealthy guy and then the beautiful woman, like, right? Like it's right there. It's money, sex, and power. There it is. Yeah. And we utilize these different energies unconsciously. We learn through modeling. We learn through the media. We learn that we have these different currencies. And particularly as women, some of us, not myself, but other women I know, were raised more to utilize their sexual energy currency. Mm-hmm. And men are more likely to use their financial currency energy as a way of attraction, as a way of utilizing their power in the world. So that's just kind of interesting to roll around in your mind and be like, oh, wow, how am I playing with those energies in my own life? And I'm not talking about power over, I'm talking about power which is sort of like the darker side of power, but like the power to use your will in the world and create what you want to create. That's all I'm talking about in terms of power. So when it comes to relationships, some of the most common things I see are a lot of secrecy, avoidance, hierarchy created around whose job pays more, or an idea of like whose job is more important, whose income is more valued. So it's very common in the work that I do to see that couples fight a lot about money. Money is the usual number one cause of divorce, money issues. And there's so much shame and secrecy because it's a taboo topic. So folks are all over the place, just getting married, having no idea what's actually happening behind the scenes with their partner's finances. And then all of a sudden, because of the marriage contract, their partner's finances are now their finances. Yeah. And so I love to encourage people to learn each other's money stories, not just the math, but actually like what's underneath the surface. What did you learn about money growing up? What do you believe around money? What are some of your habits? What do you think is possible for you? What are your desires? What are your ambitions? What kind of investor are you? Are you an investor at all? What's your debt history? Like, I think those kind of conversations to have earlier rather than later, maybe not on the first date, but like really getting into it, it's really important. And it's not to say that you're going to not be with someone because maybe they have a financial past that you wouldn't have chosen, but the level of connection and intimacy that can be created when we're being honest and like getting financially naked is so beautiful, and people avoid it for decades. And then they do that work in our programs, and they're like, oh my God, I'm having financial conversations with my spouse for the first time in decades. We're not fighting. We're having the greatest time. Now we're on the same page, and that life force energy, that money, sex, and power energy then can come on board and fuel the financial desires and the dreams of the marriage or of the partnership in this beautiful way that it can't if there's avoidance, secrecy, shame, all of that. That's like a huge energetic block that will shut down your second chakra energy.
Yeah, so true. What I found really useful in our conversations and conversations that we suggest to our clients to have is to ask a fundamental question to get the conversation started as to what do you even believe is the role of money in our lives.
Love that.
Like what is money's role? And what we found is a lot of people never answer that question to start with. They just think you just should have money. But
well,
like
it's so unconscious.
Yeah, it's like what is it doing for you? Fine, you have money. Now what? Like what is the role? What would you do if you had all the money in the world? or whatever money you think is all the money in the world, because that's also so arbitrary. And as you ask these questions, you recognize that the definition of a lot of money is different for everyone. The role of money is so different. You could love each other and have completely different roles of money.
Yes.
And what's really the purpose of making more if you have to make more? What is the vision of life, or how do we define a good life? What is a good life? Is just more money, or does it actually have elements beyond that? And if it has elements beyond that, is the elements more important, or is money more important? And it kind of sets a person up to say, okay, if I don't have which I think is a more difficult conversation, which is talk about let's say your impending debt that you have, or debt that you've just accumulated because let's say you were unconscious about it. You were in your 20s, you were just like whatever, and you realize, crap, I have too much debt now. It's easier to then say, you know what, I've been this until now because of my relationship with money. And now I like to change that because now I want to go here. Now you can come up with a plan together, which is kind of what you said when you had accumulated debt. One of the biggest things that, from what I understood you said, was to sit down and say, let's make a plan to get out of this. And then you were able to. Yeah. The challenge that most people have is they never make that plan because it's so scary.
It's so scary. And there's so much shame. And the shame, like actually facing it, the shame feels so bad that because shame says, I am fundamentally bad, right? Not I've done something bad, but like I am bad. Mm-hmm. And so we avoid it because of that feeling of shame. But actually what we know, of course, from Brene Brown's work is that shame cannot exist in the light. And that's why having a safe person, whether it's your partner, whether it's, a professional that you hire, whether it's a community, whatever, that shame dissolves, which is powerful because without the shame, then you're just like, oh, well, now it's just kind of practical. Mm-hmm. Now I'm just going to make a plan. And so, but I love those questions. And I'm going to be asking Mike on the way to date night tomorrow night, what do you believe the role of money is in our lives? Yeah. It's a good one.
It's a fun question.
Yeah, it's great.
Fun question. It definitely also shared like our fundamental values around money. It's like, okay, what is it that we actually see? And we found out, for me and Neeta both, that the role of money we had for both of it, now it's much more closer because once you talk about it enough, you kind of go, okay, there's like a bridge. We kind of have the same understanding. It's just we position it differently. But when we started, we were like two other ends of what the role of money was in our life. Mine was absolute safety. It was just like the money's job is only to make me feel safe. And that's the only purpose of it, which meant, of course, I saved a lot and I spent very little because, if that's your story, that's what you would do. Whereas Neeta's definition of what was the role of money in her life was to live life.
Yes.
So she was like,
adventure,
I don't care how much my savings that I want to go for this adventure, this experiences. Not being irresponsible about it, but still what's the point of keeping it in a bank account? So, of course, two completely different points
Which is very common in relationships that will have a spender and a saver attract.
Yeah. So eventually now it's more, we now have she's moved towards this side, I moved towards this side a little bit, and now we have a more balanced approach that makes sense, and we have common agreements.
Common agreements. I'm so glad you said that. That's one of the things I really recommend. Now, listen, people are always like, how exactly should I set it up with my spouse? And I'm like, I am not here to prescribe, but what I am going to tell you is you need to have a system and you need to have clear agreements. No agreements, vagueness will repel money so fast. And so we need to have clear agreements with ourselves. We need to have clear agreements with our partner, whether everything is shared financially, whether you keep everything separate, whether it's some combination. The clarity is what actually magnetizes money to us. Money loves clarity.